The mahogany dining room fell silent except for the grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Margaret Williams had just called me a charity case in front of her entire family, and frankly, I was tired of pretending to be the helpless daughter-in-law who needed their approval. "Excuse me." Margaret's voice cracked slightly as she stared at the official documents spread across her pristine white tablecloth. The property deed clearly showed my name, Alexandra Bennett, as the sole owner of 847 Maple Drive, the Victorian mansion she'd been so proud of for 30 years. My husband David dropped his wine glass. "Alex, what is this?" I smiled calmly, folding my hands in my lap. "It's exactly what it looks like. I bought your mother's house last month when the bank put it up for foreclosure. She was 3 months behind on payments." Margaret's face went from smug confidence to ash-white terror in seconds. "That's impossible. This house has been in our family for 30 years, yes. Until you took out that second mortgage to fund David's brother's failed restaurant. Then the third mortgage for your European cruise. The bank was very helpful in explaining the situation when I made my cash offer." David's sister Jennifer, who had been smirking just moments before, leaned forward with wide eyes. "You're lying. Mom would never." "The foreclosure notice is right there," I said, pointing to the official document. "Feel free to call First National Bank tomorrow. Ask for Mr. Richardson in commercial lending. He handled the sale personally." Margaret's husband Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Now see here, young lady. I see perfectly clearly, Robert. I see a family that has spent 5 years treating me like an intruder in their precious family circle. I see people who whisper about my humble background and assume I'm some gold digger who trapped their son." The truth was, I'd been watching this family's financial downfall for months. David never paid attention to his parents' money problems. He was too busy with his consulting firm to notice that his mother had been calling him for small loans that were anything but small. Margaret found her voice again, though it shook with barely controlled panic. You can't just buy someone's house out from under them." "Actually, I can. It's called a foreclosure auction. Very public, very legal. Your house was listed in the newspaper for 3 weeks. Where do you think you've been living rent-free for the past month?" Jennifer's husband Mark, who had always treated me like furniture during family gatherings, suddenly looked very interested in the conversation. "So you actually own this place now?" "Every square inch. The house, the gardens, the 3-car garage where Robert keeps his vintage Corvette." I paused for effect. The one he's been telling everyone he bought with his investment portfolio. Robert's face reddened. "My investments are none of your business. They became my business when I had to review the property liens. Turns out that Corvette is collateral for a loan you defaulted on 6 months ago. The bank is coming for it next week." The room erupted in chaos. Margaret started crying, David looked like he'd been hit by a truck, and Jennifer began frantically whispering to her husband about their own financial situation. "How long have you known?" David asked quietly. "About the foreclosure?" 3 months. "About your family's attitude toward me?" 5 years. I stood up, smoothing my dress. "I tried to be the perfect daughter-in-law, David. I smile at their parties, I bring expensive gifts, I listen to your mother explain how I'm not quite what they had in mind for you." Margaret wiped her eyes with her linen napkin. "We never said." "You didn't have to say it directly, Margaret. But calling me a charity case at your own dinner table? That was a new low, even for you." I walked to the window overlooking the garden Margaret had always been so proud of. The interesting thing about foreclosures is how much you learn about people's real financial situation. Did you know your son has been supporting you for 2 years? The mortgage payments, the credit card bills, even the country club membership you love to brag about. David rubbed his temples. "Alex, we should talk about this privately." "No, David. We've been private about too many things for too long. Your family thinks I'm some kind of burden on you, when the truth is quite the opposite." I turned back to face the table full of shocked faces. "I've been watching you all struggle with money while pretending everything was fine. Margaret refinanced this house 3 times. Robert's successful consulting business hasn't made a profit in 18 months. Jennifer and Mark are behind on their mortgage too. I saw the notice when I was researching comparable properties in the neighborhood." Jennifer gasped. "You had no right to." Public records, Jennifer. All perfectly legal research. I sat back down, pulling out another folder from my purse. Which brings me to my proposal. Margaret looked terrified. Proposal? You can continue living here. All of you, actually. The house is big enough. I opened the folder, revealing a rental agreement. Market rate for a house this size is $3,800 per month. I'm willing to let you stay for $2,000, plus utilities. The silence was deafening. Robert sputtered, "We're not paying rent to live in our own house." "It's not your house anymore, Robert. It's mine. And frankly, $2,000 is generous considering the condition of the roof and the fact that the heating system needs to be completely replaced." David stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You really bought my parents' house." "I saved your parents' house, David. The bank was going to auction it next week. Some property developer was circling, planning to tear it down and build condos." I reached over and touched his hand. "I know how much this place means to you. All those childhood memories, family traditions. I couldn't let it disappear." Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. You saved it." "I saved it. But I'm not running a charity, despite what you might think." I looked directly at her. "You want to stay in your family home? You pay rent like adults. You want to keep treating me like an outsider? Find somewhere else to live." Jennifer tried a different approach. "Alex, surely we can work something out. Family should." "Family?" I laughed, but it wasn't bitter. "Jennifer, you've never once invited me to girls' night. You've never asked my opinion about anything. You introduce me to your friends as David's wife like I don't have a name." I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo. "This is the house I grew up in. A 2-bedroom apartment above my grandmother's bakery. Your son fell in love with a girl who worked 16-hour days to put herself through college. Who built her own accounting firm from nothing. Who made enough money to save your family home when your own financial planning failed." David squeezed my hand. "Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" "Because you never asked, David. You assumed your parents were fine. You assumed I was grateful to be accepted into your successful family. You never wondered how a girl from the wrong side of town could afford to contribute equally to our household expenses." Margaret was crying again, but these seemed like different tears. "I'm sorry, Alexandra. We didn't understand." "What didn't you understand, Margaret? That poor people can be smart? That women can make money? That your son chose me because he loves me, not because I needed saving?" I stood up again, this time gathering my papers. "The rental agreement is on the table. You have until Friday to decide. If you'd rather find somewhere else to live, I'll give you 60 days to move out. But the days of treating me like I don't belong here are over." As I headed toward the door, Robert called out, "Alexandra, wait." I turned back. What about the country club membership?" I smiled. "Funny you should ask. I bought that too. Turns out they were planning to cancel your membership for non-payment next month. You can keep it, but you'll need to start actually paying the monthly fees." Margaret looked up from her tears. "You bought our country club membership." The club was very understanding when I explained the situation. "They are willing to transfer the membership to my name and allow you to remain as my guests. As long as you're current on payments, of course." David shook his head in amazement. "Is there anything else you've been secretly taking care of?" "Your brother's restaurant loan. I bought that debt from the bank too. He has 6 months to start making payments or I'll have to make some difficult decisions about the collateral." The room fell silent again as the full scope of my financial intervention sank in. "The thing is," I continued, "I don't want to be your family's banker. I want to be your family's daughter-in-law. There's a difference." I picked up the rental agreement and handed it to Margaret. "This includes a clause about family dinners. If I'm paying to keep this house in your family, I expect to be treated like family when I'm here. No more comments about my background, my clothes, or my qualifications to be David's wife." Margaret nodded, clutching the papers like a lifeline. "We can do that. We should have done that years ago." "Good. Because I've been looking forward to having a real family for a very long time." I looked around the room at each of them. I just never expected I'd have to buy my way into it. As I walked to the door, David followed me. Alex, wait. I had no idea you'd been handling all of this alone. I turned to face my husband, the man I'd fallen in love with 5 years ago despite his family's obvious disapproval. I wasn't handling it alone, David. I was handling it quietly. There's a difference. What do you need from me? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. I need you to start seeing me as your partner, not your charity case. I need you to stop letting your family treat me like an outsider. And I need you to understand that the woman you married is a lot stronger than any of you gave her credit for. David pulled me into his arms. I'm sorry it took foreclosure papers for me to see that. Well, I said, laughing for the first time all evening, at least now we know where we'll be spending Christmas for the next few years. From inside the dining room, I could hear Margaret tentatively asking Robert, do you think she meant it about the Corvette? I squeezed David's hand. Should we tell them about the car loan I paid off last week? Maybe save that revelation for next Sunday's dinner, David grinned. I think they've had enough shock for one evening. As we walked to our car, I felt the satisfaction of finally being seen for who I really was, not a charity case, but the woman who had just saved their entire family from financial ruin. And the best part? I didn't have to destroy anything to do it. I just had to stop pretending to be smaller than I actually was. The rental agreement would be signed by Friday. Margaret would apologize properly by Sunday. And David would never again assume that quiet meant helpless. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply showing people exactly who they've been underestimating all along.